Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for another show today on this fine Tuesday, and this show is sponsored by Luke Roper. If you want to get 20% off everything that Luke Roper has to offer, then use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off all their lovely garments. So don't forget about the Luke code when you get yourself some Luke clothes. As I say, 20% is a pretty good deal, isn't it? So yeah, 20% off Luke Roper, TVV20. So go and treat yourselves if you're after some new clothes this summer. Now, I delved onto social media earlier, which is quite often a dangerous thing to do, but I quite like making episodes around what people on social media are saying and their opinions. The people that watch my stuff, the people that follow me on social media, for the most part, are very kind and like to have discussion. So I like to base shows around that at least once a week if I can. And today I delved on to ask the question, after game one, who do you think is Aston Villa's most important player this season? Replies may be featured on the 1874 podcast. So I got 84 replies at the time of recording. So I'm going to sit here and go through a few of them and see whether I agree with them or not. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of take all your opinions and then make my own and decide who I think is the most important player for Aston Villa in the 25-26 season. First up is AVFC Faithful, and I believe this would be called an unpopular opinion, AVFC Faithful, because he says, I think it could be Maatsen or Luca Dean. First of all, you've got to pick one, not two. Seems to be the only width we have right now, and they could be heavily relied on. So I can't accept that answer, I'm afraid, AVFC Faithful, because you've given me two players. You've got to pick one. You've got to read the brief sometimes. AVFC Faithful. The next reply in front of me here is from someone who I believe is classing himself as a YouTuber now because he got caught on camera lying in the backseat of my car whilst me and my dad had a conversation in front of the camera. It's a guy called Martin Aston. He's saying Marlon feels like his width, finishing and pace will be much needed with the departures of Rashford, Bailey and Ramsey. However, I am worried we're all expecting too much from him. I mean, in all honesty, at the moment, we can all expect what we want because the guy can't get on the pitch. I've said in previous shows, I can't believe he only got 5-6 minutes in the last game or whatever it was he got. He must wonder what he's got to do to start a game. I'm fully expecting to see him against Brentford. I think he might be maybe the only change for the Brentford game at the weekend, but I'm certainly keen to see much more from Daniel Marlon and see him start more games or even just come off the bench for longer, because stereotypically, actually, even when he's come off the bench, he hasn't been for very long. But I think to say he's the most important player for the season, I do believe Martin Aston. That's a little bit of a stretch at the moment, but that may well change as the season goes on. To be fair, the first three, I wouldn't have thought anyone would have replied with these first three replies. So it's PT Woody AVFC 83 says, I know it sounds odd, but Bezo is right up there. Finally, when called upon, we have a player that can help collect points and we all have confidence in him. And I know someone else has answered the same as we go through later on, so I'll talk about that then as well. But again, backup goalkeeper, probably not going to be the most important player moving forward this season. B6 Ben O'Connell says, Martinez definitely. He's the first name of the team sheet and the least replaceable, the best in the world for a reason. Now, despite just kind of saying about the reply before Ben's, I think now we have got an adequate goalkeeper who, looks reliable, looks like he's going to be reliable if he's called upon. I don't think you can put Martinez down as the most important now. I assume he's going to come back into the team against Brentford. I'd be very, very surprised if he didn't. I agree that he's up there as the best in the world, with like Ben says. But I think now we've got an adequate replacement. I think to label him as the most important player for Villa this season probably isn't right. But these are all opinions anyway. I'm just giving my opinion that I think some of these are wrong, but you cannot be wrong with an opinion. It's your own opinion, of course. Dan Matthews says, toss of a coin between Tielemans and Kamara. Both have reasonable shouts. Kamara offers the defensive side, Tielemans the link between defence and attack. I'd lean towards Tielemans as he's that crucial link to creating chances in transition going forward. Now, I called for Tielemans in the 10 before the last game, and I thought that was what we would do, and it was what we did do, and it got an Anna in the team, which I think gave us some stability with him and Kamara, but we definitely lost something in terms of distribution from deep and picking out runners. Watkins and Rodgers didn't see much of the ball. I think that's because Tielemans was playing as a 10 and we couldn't get him on the ball. As Kamara's a good passer, but it's not really his game, kind of picking out those raking passes, and it's not an Arna's game at all. Although again, he's a decent passer. we missed Tielemans being deeper, picking out those runners, and I do believe that's one of the reasons why Watkins and Rodgers weren't really in the game, because we couldn't get them on the ball. But Dan Matthews, you've gone for either or. You've not picked one. So at the moment, I'm leaning towards one of them being my final answer. But as we go through, maybe I'll change my mind. Chris Cooper says, if Watkins can have a 20-plus season, we will do well. I'd expect him to have that season. Obviously, the links to Nicholas Jackson have continued today. I'd be shocked if that was something that happened this week, for example. Maybe at the end of the window. We've seen Chelsea loan players late on in the window because they don't just want them hanging around. Maybe that's something that happens towards I'm talking like the last few days of the window here. If Chelsea don't think they're going to get a suitable offer, I still think Newcastle is the risk with Jackson in terms of taking him, because as soon as Isak goes, they're going to look at what's available, and Nicholas Jackson is available. Watkins is the only actual centre-forward in the building for Villa at the moment, so I think that's probably the most sensible shout so far, and it's certainly up there in my thinking when I come up with my answer, because he's the only centre-forward. Everything I've just said about Martinez and him now having backup at the other end of the pitch, although there's players that can fill in there, they're not proven to be able to lead the line in the Premier League for Aston Villa. They might be able to fill in for 2-3 games, but if something was to happen to Watkins for a sustained period, would we be happy, or would Emery be happy with Gasson or Marlon leading the line? Not sure why I pulled that face after I said Gasson. I don't know. We don't know. There's not enough kind of body of work to go back and look at that or look into that. Stephen Deakin, again, no one wants to pick one player here. I'm going to have to start making the rules a little bit clearer when I do these things. Stephen Deakin says either Konsa, Cash or Watkins, simply because we've got no backups, which feeds into what I was just saying about Watkins. Cash may be a decisive one, but if he's injured, then Konsa goes there. Then what? Bogard for an intended run of right centre-back. We need a couple of signings for sure. I think in that instance, I think it would be Bogard that went to right back, and Konsa would stay where he is. If you saw when Dizazi was signed as well, Emery seemed a bit more reluctant last season than he was the season before to put Konsa in the right back situation. So I think if that did happen to Cash, I think Bogard would be the right back. And then there's also players in the academy as well, and Garcia. So I think, I don't think it's Cash. Konsa's a shout. Obviously, there's no senior backup for him. If Mings gets injured or Torres gets injured, there's the other one to come in, but at right centre-back, Konsa's the senior option there. But I don't think there's much danger at the moment of Konsa ever having to move to right-back. Real array of answers here, by the way. Oakley Dokley says Rodgers, really, because he is the creativity at the moment, especially until Gasson gets up to speed. Also, of course, Yuri, who I think at the moment needs to play deeper. So Oakley Dokley, I'm going to go with Rodgers being your answer there. Look, Rodgers had an off day on Saturday. Couldn't really ever get going, didn't see loads of the ball. I was fine with Rodgers. If he starts a game well, I feel like that's him. And if he doesn't, he has one of those off games. But he clearly is, without being a massively creative player, he nearly knocked a perfect through ball through in the first half to Watkins. I think it was. He didn't quite come off. Without being that stereotypical creative player, Rodgers is the most dangerous player, the player that's going to kind of make things happen by going on a driving run, popping a shot off or beating a man. So without being that creative spark, I see what you're saying really about him being the creativity, Oakley Dokley, because he'll create things, he'll create moments for Aston Villa in different ways than a distributor would. James Woodcock says, dare I say, Bizot going to play a lot of minutes in the Europa League, which is our golden ticket to Champions League football, and more importantly, a trophy. No way we trust Olsen to do the same, in my opinion. Now, James Woodcock's backed up his answer a bit better than the last person that said Bizot, and I get the point of him. He will play in the Europa League group stage. I'd have thought for him to sign, he'd have had to kind of have known that in most Europa League games, especially in the group stage, he's going to play. If we get a plum draw against a big team, Martinez will probably play. But for the rest, it would be Bizot, I would have thought. And we saw Olsen start games when we thought Martinez probably should in the past. It is nice to know that you've got that adequate backup, and I thought he had a brilliant game against Newcastle, but I think it's a stretch to say he's the most important player for Villa moving forward. Matt Dryhurst says Rodgers as well. It's Rodgers for goals and the sense of freshness. He's our most admired player, and that makes the project feel full of promise. It's a big year. Core team only has a year or two left. Rodgers and Emery may leave if we get anything less than UEFA Champions League, despite being handicapped. There's a danger of either of them becoming disillusioned because of the rules at the moment. Rodgers is just seeing his best mate leave. I'm not going to talk about Emery because we did that yesterday. But Rodgers is just in his best mate leave. Rodgers knows he's got admirers that are playing at the highest level. He's loving it at Villa. He's loving working under Unai Emery, and I hope it happens for a long, long time. But again, if we're not getting back in the Champions League next season, he's had a taste of it. He'll want to play there. He'll look at how Villa are hamstrung as a club at the moment and maybe think, should I move? I don't know. It's not something that we need to worry about now, and he will sign a new contract. But that contract is as much for Villa as it is for him, really. It protects his value. It doesn't mean he's unsellable in 12 months' time, or that Villa wouldn't entertain selling him. So we're just in a bit of a sorry place at the moment in terms of transfers, which is sad because we've got the best manager and the best set of players over the last few years that we've ever had in my life, and the real dampener being put on it at the moment. Emma says Kamara and Yuri, can't pick one of them. What you were supposed to, Emma. That was what you were supposed to do. Harrison AVFC says Rodgers as well. And Darren Stoney D says Yuri. Someone with no username here. I don't know how you do that. How do you get no username? It's just a picture of an umbrella and an Italian flag. 12 AVFC says, it's so obviously Tielemans. Look at our results, and the familiar thing we see is the fact that whenever we lose, Tielemans doesn't play well. Couldn't create on Saturday because we didn't get him on the ball enough. I mean, it was very rare last season that Tielemans didn't play well. In fairness, he was our best player by a country mile last season, wasn't he? Luca says, honestly, Mings, defence is extremely open and he seems to calm things down. If he can stay fit, then he's an extremely useful asset, and he also brings leadership to the team that can be lacking when McGinn isn't playing. I was pleased to see Mings start on Saturday. Everyone knows I'm a massive fan of Tyrone, always have been, always will be, and hand on heart, I think we're a better team when Mings plays. I think we're less likely to concede goals, which is a very important part of football. But because we've got two great left-sided centre-backs, great in different ways, as much as I love Mings, I think I'd struggle to say he's the most important, but he's definitely one of the most influential when he plays, if that makes sense. Ben Spittle says, think it's going to be Kamara. He seems to be just getting better and better every season, not just with his defensive duties, but overall play too. Yep, not much argument from me with that. You can't really argue with that. Bavik Ricky Popat says Watkins, solid pre-season, and if he can take even 5% more of the number of good chances he missed last season, then he and we will have an amazing season. I was a bit disappointed for him on Saturday, to be honest. It just wasn't his kind of game. Couldn't really get in the game at all, could he? And off the back of that 5-5 in pre-season, I really thought he was going to hit the ground running. Now, he's got a good record against Brentford, so he may well hit the ground running next week away at his former team. But it's I was a bit sad that we couldn't really get him in the game much, and he couldn't get involved in the game as much as he would want to, because I imagine he was absolutely buzzing going into that first game of the season with what he'd done in pre-season. Jonty Bonte's gone a completely different route, and when I've asked for the most important player, hasn't chose a player. So that's a very niche answer. Jonty Bonte says, the fans, we need to stop losing our shit at every setback and get behind the club, even when we don't get it right. Both club and fans need a cohesive winning mentality. Now, I think I'm guilty at the moment as someone who does podcasts and talks about Villa a lot, and he's obviously pictured and not pictured. He's obviously seen and heard, saying a lot about the club. And when I do, I'll either get praise or I'll get abused. That's the way it is. That's absolutely fine. Maybe I've been a bit guilty of being down in the last 7 days, but I think it's for very good reason, and I don't think I'm alone. I think if you were to speak to anyone at the club as well off the back of the Ramsey situation, I'm sure they feel exactly the same as I do, and would say so if they were asked, or if they were being honest. The hope I have is that, we get to the end of the window and we look at where the squad's at. If we're not where we need or want to be, I'm hopeful that this PSR thing does some good in terms of just creating a siege mentality. I'd like Emery to come out and create that siege mentality by saying, yeah, the rules are out to get us. It's an absolute farce. It's not fair. It's not right. But I want it to cajole everyone and bring everyone together and almost have an us against the world mentality. I don't think that can happen until we get to the end of the window. Be interesting to see. I don't know whether Newcastle had that last season, and maybe we didn't get wind of it. I don't know. Maybe that was something that Newcastle had almost. Them against the world last season, hadn't done anything for 3 windows, and then they win a cup and get Champions League, which fair play to them. That's absolutely huge, and we'd all kill for a season like that. But yeah, I'd like to see that siege mentality kind of arrive at Villa Park. Gareth Dawes says Martinez, if his level can reach where we know it can, it will take a weight off the forwards and prevent us having to score freely, which is looking like a challenge this year. again, I'm guilty of this. It's only one game. We haven't scored in one game. Yes, we didn't look like we were ever going to score, but it is one game. If we could keep a bucket load of clean sheets, it's obviously going to help, because that was what killed us in the first half of last season. Brogan Montgomery says, I think it needs, the needs is in capital letters there, to be Gasson. We were sorely lacking pace, physicality, creativity on Saturday. Gasson is going to be key to providing that little bit extra we were missing on Saturday. Matson helps too, minus the physicality. Need big years from both. Brogan letting themselves down right at the death by throwing in another player. But if we come out at the end of the season saying Gasson is our most important player, wow, what an impact that would be. Joe Martini, going for a player that no one else has said yet, says, I'm going to go Anana. I think he will end up used in a multitude of positions, and oddly with JJ gone, I think he will be someone the fans grab onto. I see what the second point, what you're saying in terms of he's someone who's got a good relationship with the fans, someone that G's up the fans, goes up to them at the end and does his little, I don't know what you call it. What do you even call that? Way. I don't know what it's called. You call it something, I'm sure. It's the Jurgen Klopp, essentially. I don't think you'll see Anana used in a multitude of positions, but I do think you'll see him start more games than you did last season. 12th man thinks Watkins as well. Pre-season, we didn't really spread the goals around the team, and last season in the Premier League, Watkins scored 28% of our goals. Bear in mind, though, 14 of the 56 goals we scored last year are now not playing for us this season. I'd expect some of that to be offset by Asensio coming back, but there's no doubt that Duran and Rashford's goals will be missed as it stands. Can Gasson take on some of that load? It remains to be seen. And I think we miss Duran's goals. I think we miss Rashford's pace. I felt we were very one-paced at the weekend. That's one thing Rashford did do in the second half of the season. He kind of added that electricity, that just pure pace and power, running with the ball. And obviously Rodgers provides that when we can get him in the game. But I feel like Rashford kind of did it in a different way, and he's more tricky than Rodgers. Rodgers is obviously a bit more power, and Rashford's just pure pace and trickery, and he is actually powerful as well. But Rashford just provided that something extra, didn't he? And I don't think that's been spoken about enough, actually, how much Rashford is going to be missed by the club for Villa this season. Simon Strong says Kamara, not only because of the difference he makes when in midfield, but could see him having to play in defence this season a few times as well. Yep, that happened on Saturday. Obviously. Matt Jeffrey says, whoever plays behind Watkins, because that allows Tielemans to play his best position deeper. There's a space up for grabs there at the moment. If Asensio doesn't sign, I'd expect the main man there to be Rodgers, and you'll see McGinn and Gasson either side, Marlon sometimes wide on the right. You will see Asensio start more, I think, if he does sign. At the moment, it's probably unclear who that bona fide number 10 is, but hopefully we know towards the end of the window. Jacko says Rodgers as well. When he's on his game and in the mood, he's pretty much unplayable, but we don't see too many of those games currently. Ramsey's departure will have hit him hard. They were close off the pitch. I do think you have to factor in some of the off-the-pitch stuff with these players, and I do think that added to the kind of somberness and the fact that it just wasn't a brilliant game or a brilliant performance on Saturday. I think the players have been hit by Ramsey leaving the club. Love this little phrase from Dylan. Guinea looks like he's had a software update again, but we'll have to go with Euro. Last season set the bar and he looks fitter and better this season, in my opinion. We just couldn't see the Tielemans that we wanted to see for the reasons that I've already discussed on Saturday. Kieran McKenty says Tielemans as well. I think we saw how much we miss him on Saturday when he's not orchestrating things in midfield. It's tempting to be contrary and say someone else, but he was so good last season, and if he can reproduce or even push on, we'll do well. Ellis is another shout for Bezos. Says when Martinez inevitably gets injured or suspended, it could gain us some points to have a competent backup that the defence actually trusts. No shade on Olsen. Well, you're forgetting Robin Olsen away at Brentford last season, aren't you, Ellis? Yes, naughty. Mike Myatt says, I believe our most important player this year will be Kamara. Drawing up the defence as well. Hang on, that doesn't make sense, Mike Myatt. I don't know what that says, but key player and the signing of the summer for us. In the summer, I mean, I did shows around this as well. It's getting really dark in my office, by the way, but I did shows in the summer around this. You know, I think if many fans had been offered losing Kamara or Ramsey, I think they probably would have taken Ramsey. If they'd have been told Kamara was going to sign a new contract as well, I think they would have been absolutely buzzing. I mean, football shouldn't be either or, but it was always clear that someone was going to have to leave. One player was going to have to leave, which is obviously disappointing. Chris Cash says Watkins, Bill Atherton, Ollie Watkins, build as well as we like, but his main objective is to score. I have no doubt he will break the 20 Premier League goal mark this season. Fingers crossed. Let's hope so. Christie says Tielemans is going to be prime De Bruyne this season. Let's hope so. BZP says Rodgers this season. He needs a season to live up to the hype, and by that I mean more goals, assists, and more consistent performances. I'd agree with that. He's been great since he's joined, but there's another level of player in there, and he's well versed in the Emery way. It's his time to shine. I think that might be the best reply of the whole thing, if I'm being honest. So well done to BZP. You're not going to get any prize or anything like that, but I do think that's the best reply, and you've kind of hit on a point that no one's really speaking about, and I agree with you. I think that's a brilliant point. Chris W333 says probably Watkins. We've got no viable alternatives. Yep, that's what I said. Steve Thornton, the coolness personified. Kamara, better world needed. I think we'd all agree with that. Says Watkins, we need his goals. DNVR says Yuri because we have no creativity at all besides coming from him in build-up. Rodgers is making movement but can't get to him with another creative player will open up play. Yuri competition / backup, Yuri type just brings a different aspect, taller, more different. I mean, it's tailed off that tweet at the end. I don't know what that means. Allah Haku says we need Marlon / Gasson to be 23, 24 Diaby and Bailey. Yes, we do. That's absolutely what we need. Fergus Mason says Yuri's our best player, but in my opinion, it's Watkins. If Ollie were to get a mid to long-term injury, we'd have to rely on either Marlon, Rodgers or Gasson to do a job up top. My answer to this question always used to be Emma, but Bezos' quality has lessened. Emmy's important. Another brilliant reply. That's a great tweet there. Adam M. Watkins easy, Dan. If we take his goal contributions out the side with our depth this season, we're bottom half. Tom Murray says Yuri. Stuart Murphy says Kamara. Greg Moss says Kamara. Tommy says Kamara. I've taken the lead here, I think, in terms of replies. Football Paper says Watkins needs to score the goals. Hanoi says Bezos as well. A step up from Olsen and playing in cup matches. Also, we'd have probably lost to Newcastle Saturday if Olsen was between the sticks. I'd agree with that, but I still don't think you can say he's the most important player. John says Mings because he makes the defence more stable. Gabe Gray says, tough to say, but for me it's Watkins, Tielemans or Martinez. No, you're uninvited to the replies, Gabe Gray, because that's 3 players. Chris Trotter, not a player. I'm not sure I can accept this either, but I think this season is where Damian Vidagani truly shows how crucial he is to the success of the club. He always has the pulse of the fans and often looks like the man who connects players to staff off the pitch. We need him this season more than ever. Very, very, very hugely important behind the scenes is Vidagani, and he does some brilliant work, and he does truly get the fans and care about the fans as well. Tommy Daly says Kamara's ability to read the game and break up play is imperative. I haven't seen the stats match results side by side, but I would wager we do a lot better with him versus without him. I would wager that too. Oh no, what have I done here? That's okay. Russell Hancock says Mings. Lewis says Booba. Cabro Unai says Kamara as well. Drew Walsh says Watkins needs to have his best season at the club, 20 plus goals in the Premier League for us to have any chance of pushing for top 5. Connor says Booba Kamara as well. Chad Lavelle, regular watcher of the channel, says Ian Matson. He will unlock our attack and allow for Rodgers and Watkins to operate with more space. Good point. Again, I think it's a stretch to say it's the most important, but it's a really, really good point. Bear Jug says Watkins. DMH says none of them. It's Unai. Unai is the most important person at the club. I'll completely agree with that. But the players are pretty important too, which is why I asked the question. Monkey Magic says Kamara. Ralph says Watkins. Alex Byrne probably, says most important Kamara, most impactful Tielemans, best quality player Rodgers. That's a really interesting way of getting around the fact that I asked for one. He's given 3 categories himself, has Alex. I have to give you a pat on the back for that. The reply here from someone who says they're Morgan Rodgers, but I don't think it's the Morgan Rodgers, says Kamara. Charlie Radcliffe, love this positivity. This is what we need right now. Loads of different answers to this, which I guess is a major positive. Maybe I'm clutching at straws. Kazar says Kamara. GW says McGinn. Chico Hamilton's pants has gone a completely different route and says whoever the ref is on the day. Dean sent me a picture or a GIF of Unai. CJ Farmer says SJM, Super John McGinn. Daniel Jones, Mings by a country mile. Craig Banks says Kamara, as I can see him having to fill in at centre-back if we don't sign anyone. And that was that with the replies. So I think from going through that, I think the top 3 answers probably were Kamara, Tielemans and Watkins. Who am I going to say is mine? I probably came into this thinking I was going to say Watkins. But you know what I'm going to say? I'm not going to say Tielemans or Kamara either because I think central midfield's pretty strong. I think I am going to say Rodgers because I thought that tweet about him was the best one. Forgive me, I've forgotten who it was now who said that. But I think that was the best point that anyone made in the replies. And if he does, I'm not saying he's good every week because obviously he's not. But if you take him out of that setup, I think we're far, far weaker and much less dangerous in terms of much less afraid of us. I think he's the most valuable player in terms of feet at the moment. I do think he's probably the player that teams are most scared of as well. So I think I might think it's Rodgers. And I can't do what I've slagged everyone else for doing and give you another answer. So because of that tweet, I've been influenced heavily here. I'm going to say Rodgers. So that's the answer from me. Morgan Rodgers is Villa's most important player of 25-26, despite the fact I thought he was probably our worst player on Saturday. So yeah, that's football for you, isn't it? So come on, Morgan. I need you to up your game next week because I've picked you out to be our most important player. And apologies to the players that I didn't pick. Not that I'm sure any of them would even care or probably even watch. So yeah, right. That's the end of this episode of 1874 in association with Luke Roper. Use code TVV20 to get 20% off Luke garments. I'm going to point you in the direction of previous content that has been on this channel in the last kind of 3-4 days. You've got the vlog with my dad telling you what our match day is like when we go to Villa Park, as I persuaded my elderly father to come to Villa Park with his season ticket for another season with me. He's got good feedback. So I caught him yesterday reading through the YouTube comments and looking at everyone's praise of him. So he was pretty pleased with that. It was a family function, so it wasn't really the time to be doing that. But yeah, he did it. He seemed to enjoy it. He had a big smile on his face whilst he was doing it. So yeah, thanks for all the nice comments about that. And my dad probably thanks you as well. Did a show with Jacob as well. Did I do that yesterday? I think all days rolling into one at the moment. I think I did a show with Jacob yesterday. I did do a show with Jacob yesterday talking about PSR and transfers and where we are at the moment. It's probably a little bit depressing, but you know, if you want an honest talk about where Villa are at, go and listen to it. Rollo and I did a show off the back of Newcastle as well, which I think was enjoyable. I enjoyed it, considering we were talking about a 0-0. I enjoyed doing that show with Dan Rollinson. And then I'm just going to ask for all the usual things. Check out 1992, my secondary YouTube channel now, doing Premier League content on there, match previews with Jonathan Wilson from The Guardian every single Thursday. So watch that on 1992. Foundersdesign.co.uk for t-shirts that you could see behind me when I started doing the show, and now it's got so dark and I haven't put the light on, you can't see it anymore. They obviously do not glow in the dark, so we're not going to advertise that they do. And then if you have enjoyed the content on YouTube, if you could subscribe with your post notifications on, we're dangerously close to 28,000 now, so that would be really appreciated. Give us a like and leave us a comment as well via Apple and Spotify on audio. You could leave us 5 stars, a comment or a review. That would be absolutely brilliant. Let's get some reviews on Apple Podcasts. We haven't had one for a while. I know Rollo asks for them over at his channel as well. I'd like to keep us ahead of the game in terms of reviews there. And that's it. There'll be more content on the channel tomorrow, and then we'll have the Stato preview for Brentford on Thursday, and then the match preview with Dave Reed on Friday. So watch out for those. Hopefully something happens that I can make some content tomorrow, but I'll definitely be doing something. Thanks for all the support on the channel. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. And as always, up the Villa.